Welcome back, citizens! You probably have some knowledge about the two primary political parties in the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats. For more than 170 years, these two parties have dominated leadership in Washington, D.C. Every president elected since 1852 has been a member of one of these political parties. Likewise, Congress has been controlled by one party or the other since 1856. However, political parties are not mentioned at all in the U.S. Constitution. And our first president, George Washington, did not belong to a political party. So how did we end up here? Our objectives today are to summarize the formation of political parties in the United States and to compare core political and economic beliefs of the two primary political parties. Let's get started. In his farewell address to the nation, Washington cautioned against the formation of political parties in the U.S. To be clear, a political party is an organization in which members hold similar beliefs about political, economic, and perhaps social topics. The primary purpose of a party is for its candidates to be elected to office to carry out policies aligned with those beliefs. Washington warned that devotion to a political party could eventually outweigh an elected official's devotion and duty to serve the nation. It might even obstruct the creation and enforcement of laws to limit the government's power and protect the rights of citizens. In effect, Washington wanted elected leaders to closely study each issue and vote accordingly to serve the nation and its people. Despite Washington's plea, political parties were created early in our history and were led by two of his most trusted advisors. Half of the first two-party system was the Federalist Party, headed by Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton's Federalist Party acquired the name based on its support for ratification of the Constitution. The opposition was the anti-Federalist group, which soon came to be called the Democratic Republicans, which was against a powerful federal government and demanded rights for citizens and power for the states. Thomas Jefferson quickly became its leading figure. The parties evolved relatively quickly from those initial differences to others. The Federalists favored a strong federal government that supported business and industry and wished to maintain close ties to Great Britain. The Democratic Republicans pushed for a farm-based economy in which states had more power and preferred France as the primary trade partner. From those roots, the two-party system continued to evolve. The original parties soon folded and new ones were created, and by the mid-1800s, the two strongest were those that remain popular today. Historically, it is worth noting that the first Democratic president was Andrew Jackson, elected in 1829, while the first Republican elected as president was Abraham Lincoln in 1860. Within the last century, the president who seemed to embody the Democratic Party was Franklin D. Roosevelt and his New Deal reforms during the Great Depression. For Republicans, many considered Ronald Reagan and his leadership during the 1980s in battling communism and the Cold War to be the standard. The evolution of both parties has continued over the decades, but has been marked every 40 years or so by a shift in platform beliefs and membership. Let's take a look now at core beliefs for each of the two major parties. Throughout the last century, Democrats have generally been associated with higher taxes, more government services and programs, and more government interventions. On the flip side, Republicans, sometimes called the GOP or Grand Old Party, have long been considered the party of lower taxes, fewer government services and programs, and fewer government restrictions. Both parties advocate tax cuts, but for different groups. Republicans generally push for tax cuts across the board, for both corporations and for people of all income levels, all to help generate spending and jobs. Democrats, on the other hand, believe tax cuts should primarily be for middle and low-income families, while taxes on corporations and the wealthy should increase. Keeping those core beliefs in mind, let's take a look at each side's stance on several issues. Make sure you pause the video as needed, and remember, while each of the beliefs we're about to cover represents the majority of each party's members, many citizens don't agree with one party or the other on every issue. Democrats generally favor trade restrictions to protect American jobs. Republicans usually favor free trade in order to lower costs for consumers and help grow American businesses. As for labor, Republicans tend to oppose increases to the minimum wage. This helps businesses keep costs low so they can prosper and allows Americans access to cheaper products and services. Democrats generally favor increasing the minimum wage so that all citizens have more money to purchase goods and support their families. The two parties disagree on administration of social programs as well. Across the board, Democrats believe that governments should help support people in need with programs such as Social Security, welfare, unemployment benefits, and Medicaid, and that more tax dollars should be used for these programs. Republicans generally acknowledge a need for these programs, but favor less funding, fewer recipients, and tighter control. Republicans tend to favor supporting private organizations that provide help to citizens. Speaking of social programs, you might remember that the biggest expenditure for the federal government is on healthcare programs such as Medicaid and Medicare. Republicans want to limit government involvement in healthcare, citing the expense, and allow doctors the freedom to create and follow their own procedures. Democrats prefer more government oversight to ensure that doctors and hospitals follow procedures and want to keep the healthcare system accessible and safe for everyone. As you might expect, the two parties disagree on dealing with other countries. When it comes to foreign policy, both parties typically agree that sending aid to other countries is necessary, but they often disagree on the specifics involved. When military involvement may be needed in other nations, Democrats usually favor specific, targeted strikes and limited use of ground troops. On the other hand, Republicans usually favor a concentrated military effort to oust authoritarian regimes that are abusive of their power. Foreign policy is a complicated issue. We'll take a closer look at it in a future lesson. The two parties have differing opinions about punishment for crimes as well. Republicans typically believe in stronger penalties when someone has committed a crime, including selling illegal drugs. They also usually favor capital punishment, which is the death penalty. Many Democrats oppose the death penalty and often believe that nonviolent offenses, such as selling drugs, should have lighter penalties and include rehabilitation. New disagreements in this century have centered on climate change and environmental protection. For example, Democrats usually want to restrict drilling for oil and other fossil fuels to protect the environment. Republicans want to expand drilling to produce energy at lower costs to consumers. Republicans favor allowing the market to decide which forms of energy are practical. Democrats generally support using tax dollars to find alternative energy solutions. A growing trend in recent decades has been less emphasis on political and economic topics and increasing importance on social issues. Republicans tend to be conservative on social issues, whereas Democrats are generally more liberal. For example, regarding a topic we mentioned in a previous lesson on the Second Amendment, Democrats usually favor gun control laws, while Republicans generally oppose such limitations on the right to bear arms. Despite George Washington's plea against political parties in the United States, they were quickly formed in the early years of the nation. Ironically, it was two members of Washington's first cabinet that evolved as the figureheads of the first two parties. Since that time, several political parties have come and gone. Even today, we have many political parties in the United States, but for almost 2 centuries, the two strongest have been the Democrats and the Republicans. As for what the future holds, the only sure thing is that political parties will continue to evolve to meet the wants and needs of citizens. That's why it's your duty to stay informed and involved, young citizens. Vote, debate, and participate, and remember to always be clever.
Hey, hey.